Oi, oi. Trusty Ape, Trusty Ape. Hashtag Trusty Ape Co. At Trusty Ape Co. Also at Stupid Monkey Philosophy. Because I never say it. Don't forget to like the stream and share it with people if you want to do that type of shit. It is 9:02 in the PM here, July 28th, 2024. Gonna do something a little bit different tonight. And I'll just go ahead and throw an invite out there for trusted friends of the channel. Hey, what's happening? Good to see you, Sammy. Been a while. Yeah, it's been a long fucking day. We'll just leave it at that. I've had a long fucking day, but doing the do, staying clean, and doing my meetings. Did the band thing. We rehearsed. Not the Trusty Apes, the other band, Calicide. Well, 3 out of 4 members anyway. So we played a bunch of punk rock tunes. That was fun. Other than that, I'm going to check out some news. Been having buffering issues trying to watch YouTube videos on here again, so I have not been up with the news cycle, so looks like we got some background noise. Just throw this back on low. All the conservatives' favorites, CNN. Vance says childless cat lady's comments were a quip, not a criticism. Alright, that's fun. Hope y'all are doing well. I know I sure am. GOP Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance on Sunday said his comments about childless cat ladies were not a criticism of people without children. Yeah, no shit. Quote, but there are a whole host of people who don't have children for a whole host of reasons, and they certainly are great people who can participate fully in the life of this country. And that's not what I said. End quote. And that's not what I said. Yeah, you don't say. Apparently said this to Fox News. Vance said in 2020 the U.S. was being run by a bunch of childless cat ladies. He said, quote, it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, and the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? End quote. Jesus, what a fucking moron. But on Sunday night, Vance said, oh yeah, this is not a non-biased news source, meaning me. This is not a criticism, and was never a criticism. How is that not a fucking criticism? Of everybody without children, accusing Democrats of taking his comments out of context. Yeah, it's about as in context as it gets, buddy. What he was attempting to convey, Vance said, was that it's important for us to be pro-family as a country. I'd say that's just your opinion, bro. Quote, of course, for a whole host of reasons, it's not going to work out for some people. We should pray for those people and, of course, have sympathy for them. I still think that means we should be pro-family. Generally speaking, as a party, he argued. Yeah, first as a country, now as a party. Good job. Good job. Alright, with 100 days until the election, Harris and Trump spent Sunday letting their allies snub for them. With 100 days to go until the election, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris spent Sunday largely allowing their political allies to spread their messages after the two candidates hit the campaign trail the day earlier. Here's what both candidates' teams were up to Sunday. Harris announces fundraising haul. Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm tired of seeing these fucking guys. Dude, I'm getting, like, crazy amounts of ads from Kamala Harris asking for donations, and it makes me wonder how much money do they spend on the ads where they're asking you for money? I'm like, if you just spent your own fucking money instead of buying more ads, you wouldn't have to be asking me for money, right? Doesn't make any kind of sense. Hey, Christian Sodium Channel, good to see you, Kelby. Feel free to come by and say hi if you are so inclined. The vice president's campaign said in a memo that it had raised $200 million since President Joe Biden dropped out of the race and endorsed her, with 66% of those donations coming from first-time donors. Trump and Harris take a breather. Trump, the Republican nominee for president, and Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee, both held off from hosting large campaign events after they each hit the trail Saturday to fundraise and rally potential voters. Yeah, and so she spends these ads asking for money so that she can create more ads supposedly to reach out to voters. Why didn't you just use the ad space you had in the first place to just reach out to more fucking voters? No. I think they're trying to break even here. Possibly even make a profit. Harris and allies call Republicans weird. Who we got here? Ah. Hey, Kelly, how you doing, man?
Hey, what up?
Same old stuff on another Sunday. Let me turn my echo cancellation on here. You know if there is an echo.
Let's see if that worked. Sounds right.
It's good to me. Hey, Brojo, Silver Wolf, good to see y'all. How was your Sunday?
Just recovering really. I had a crazy ass Saturday. I was I haven't done hallucinogens in a long time, and I still haven't done them in a long time. I had the opportunity to, but somebody I was with and a few other people did it. But we were in the middle of a boat, in the middle of like the water, middle of the bay. One guy was a family member, and one dude just totally started like they kept eating them. They had like chocolates with the mushrooms baked into them, basically psilocybin. And they took a bunch when we went out. Spent a bunch of time in the water, chilling, and partying, whatever. We're just hanging out, jamming, and so it was like mad boat. Like I don't know if it was like half. There was an event going on somewhere, but I guess it's just I don't know what it looks like normally. So I don't normally go out and and do this, but yeah, there's like lots and lots of different types of boats and like drones and police. So it was kind of surreal, and but but later on, we like went to one of these restaurants that had like a like where you pull up with your boat to it, and and like man, they ate more of it, and it was just totally. I'm just kind of laughing it off. I'm just like, this is like Fear and Loathing. I'm like Las Vegas, but it's it's basically what they're doing. And there's one dude's like birthday party, so it was kind of like, all right. But man, it just by the time we got out to the boat and we took off, man, there were like one dude's like fist fighting the guy that was driving. I'm like, we had to like stop the boat in the middle of it, and like we're in the middle of the freaking bay, like just fucking one like holding the dude back. We literally had to sit on. I mean, he's like the most you can imagine somebody tripping out. This dude was tripping out. Like we had to lock him down in the bottom of the boat, and like one dude was down there who was also tripping, but he wasn't tripping out. Like he was down there like holding him down. And then like I basically had this. Anyway, long story short, I ended up staying up like all night, like making sure like all the guns were hidden and freaking. And at one point, I actually had to like I've been watching a lot of police videos, and at one point, man, yeah, totally like just like I had to take him down. And I was just like, did the whole grappling shit. It was just like, nope, you're not gonna get violent on me. I'm gonna get violent on you. But yeah,
That's crazy. I've never felt the urge to get violent on psilocybin.
Yeah, he was drinking too.
Oh, yeah, that'll probably
Not,
do it then.
not a good mix. But yeah, that was the first time I had any kind of violence for a while, where I actually went hands on with. I mean, he's younger than me. If I went squared up toe to toe, normal situation, he would probably kick my ass. I mean, no doubt. But he was so freaking whacked out of his mind. But yeah, it was interesting.
I think the last time I took, I microdosed like a little over a year ago, and I was coming down off some stimulants, so I had kind of a pretty emotional ride. But I just kind of started crying and curled up in the corner, and then I came out of it pretty quickly.
Yeah, mixing that stuff. I had a few events with hallucinogens back in the day. I mean, one of them was where I was basically got beat by 9 police. So I mean, there was and I just remember at one point like the entire situation. I can remember every bit of it pretty much. Well, I don't know, maybe not every bit of it. But I can remember my thought process when all this happened, and yeah. So it was interesting watching somebody else like almost go through it, except for like this guy was lucky enough to have people there with him that like really, because I could see a situation like that where like somebody calls the police show up and try to control him, and then they just end up like shooting him.
Yeah, alcohol and mushrooms on a boat in the middle of the waters doesn't sound like it could end well. Yeah. I remember several years ago, I was in jail, and I was in the holding tank, so there was a bunch of us in there, and there was this guy. He couldn't have been more than like 20, and I don't know whether he was on mushrooms or LSD, but he was definitely tripping balls, and it just smelled like a fucking foot. You could tell he had been out in the woods somewhere or something, and there was this like hardened con who kept, telling him like, move away from here. I'm like, he kept threatening him and stuff. And the guy was just so tripped out. He just kept laughing, and kept pissing the other guy off more and more. I felt so bad for him. Luckily, they finally got him out of there. But man, that was just a bad situation. I was like, I don't think they should be putting that guy in with the general population right now,
Yeah, definitely not. that's wild. It's interesting. That's where you send somebody to the hospital. But I don't know. Maybe the rules have changed. Because I know for me, they like strapped me down and put me in. But they literally. I mean, they maced me and beat me to where I could probably like barely like stand up. Although at some point they just got me into the back of the paddy wagon thing. But yeah, it's
So I saw an ad today. I was in downtown Berkeley, and apparently they have a mush. It's called uh, Mush Love, and it's a delivery service for psilocybin. And they had it posted like right there on the on the street lamppost or whatever. So I was like, oh, I'm not sure if that's legal or they just don't give a fuck. They had like a one of those like app tags, so you could just scan it with your phone and it'd take you to their website.
I wouldn't be
I didn't
surprised.
get. Yeah.
I've never seen somebody trip out on mushrooms. So, I mean, I've had some pretty intense experiences on mushrooms, but LSD has always been the thing where it's like, all right, I always figured somebody mixes something, puts a little bit too much S than D or whatever, and it's like it's gonna like I can see that, but mushrooms has always seemed to be a little bit more mellow. But I mean, I have had intense experiences on it, but these dudes like they took so much, and like I've heard others like when you take just the oil, that's like the concentrated version. I mean, yeah, it's crazy because normally mushrooms have always considered safe, but yeah.
The first time I took mushrooms, I was at a birthday party for my neighbor, and he was like a couple years older than me, but we were in high school, and I remember I dosed up that night, and I went home and slept, and I went over the next morning and to go check on the guy, and he was hiding in his closet. He still had a bunch of mushrooms. He's like, they're in the kitchen. take him. I don't want him, like, and I couldn't get him out of that closet, but I took the rest of his mushrooms, and I dosed up pretty pleasantly for about 3 days straight.
I, I gave some to these two guys once for the first time. And I played, we used to play what's called, it's kind of like D&D, but it was Middle Earth. So it's sort of the same thing with tabletop, dice and books and stuff like that. And I got these two guys to play that I think one of them was a pizza delivery driver. I lived in like an apartment that was on the like sort of like the top floor, where the bottom floor was this pizza place. So like he worked down there, and he's like, so he took it for the first time. We're sitting there trying to play the game, like while we take it. So by the time they kick in, we can't. Like I'm trying to like draw a map, and we just end up staring at the map for like 20 minutes, and or something, like some ridiculous amount of time. It's like, okay, I think this, because at first we weren't sure if it was going to work. So I had like a bag of like really old stuff, but by the end of it, by the time he left, because I was like, nah, you'll be able to get to sleep. It's not like acid. Because I was used to taking it. I had never taken mushrooms for forever. Like by the time I had stopped taking LSD, like mushrooms was something that was kind of like, yeah, like having a beer. Although again, like using that concentrated shit was like, but this dude, like, I think, I don't know if he called out of work or he went into work, because like he said he basically just laid there awake all freaking night with like, all these like images going through his head, and I'm just, I kind of felt bad because I did tell him he'd be fine by the morning, because that's one thing he's like, I better be fine tomorrow, and I'm just like, you'll be fine, dude. And I'm like, well, technically, I think I just looked at him, I was like, well, you are fine, right? Like, you're not still tripping. He's like, yeah, but I didn't fucking sleep. I'm just like, yeah.
I've heard stories about people who like never come back from psilocybin trip, and I always think that's like must be pretty uncommon, because I've never, I've heard the stories, but I've never actually met any of those people. So I imagine they must be like locked away in asylums or something.
I can see it set somebody over the edge. Like maybe if they already had something that was like, I literally saw somebody like lose their mind over the course of a couple weeks, maybe a month. When I used to, that same pizza place, like I worked there, and the guy who was the dishwasher, like he'd sit in the back. He was a good worker, but he'd sit in the back. He was just like a normal guy. He'd sit there and like make fun of people. He was kind of like a yo boy, and but I mean he was cool. But like at one point, he was very much like, he would like talk like very thuggish, And I would go back there and always talking about like mystical stuff, just because like see what he would react to. And but at one point, so that's why I'm always like, did I make him go crazy? But because at some point he started adding numbers to what he was saying. Like, oh, when he's like them, and then these people are gonna start coming, and they got them 85, 67, and he'd look in your eyes and be like he expects you to know what he's talking about, and it increased over the course of like a few days to where everybody's kind of looking at each other like, dude, what's going on with this dude? And because he was younger than me, it was just like, and I was like maybe, I don't know, 25 at the time, and he was probably like 20, 23 or something. He needed to look older, but yeah, like. And I remember like putting a freaking butcher knife like underneath my tray, like just because he was a big dude. And yeah, and just it got more and more where he was just talking just crazy. Because I was like, are you joking? Like I'm looking at him in the eye, like, are you just messing around? So he's like, he would just say just kind of, I can't even like, reproduce what the crazy stuff that he was saying. Like it had some semblance of reality and some other form of reality. Like it would be like, yeah, those 69 people from the Arizona are coming in. He's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, no, I don't know what you're saying. And
not a clue.
They came in. They had to call. They called the police, or they called somebody, and they took him away. And they're like, yeah, did you hear? He had like a nervous breakdown. And I guess that's what they called it. I was just like, okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's like the meth heads who get the shadow people, coming at them and stuff. You're like, over there in that tree. Like, I don't see anything. It might be a squirrel, but you can't talk him out of it.
The more you add to it, the more less is more with that sort of situation. The more you're going to add to the situation, the more their minds are going to find a way to interpret it into the delusion.
Yeah, and I mean that stuff, by nature just makes you paranoid. Um, Sammy said, never add alcohol to any drugs. Alcohol should always be a standalone. And then, but he said maybe with a bit of weed at most. Yeah, I mean, and that used to be my thing, would be getting crossfaded. Um, so it'd be like with just the right amount of alcohol and marijuana, you're all right. But alcohol and cocaine made me invincible. I'm firmly convinced of that. So I don't know.
Well, really, I think the hallucinogenic portion, I think, is the main. Like, after tripping so much and like watching drunks at parties, that I think prevented me from becoming a true alcoholic later on in life, because I could never look at human beings the same way. And after watching human beings that are super drunk while you're like peaking, and they just look like giant juicy meat monsters that are just like, and you're just like, wow. And and then you're like, that's, and then every time you would drink, kind of that image would come to my mind. And then, yeah, I became like a big alcohol snob after that, especially mixing, just what I just saw yesterday, just further compounds that.
I remember that used to be my line, was especially because I play a lot of bars, and I always say, because we're professional musicians, that anytime my bandmates would get too bugged up, I'd say that's where I draw the line. If we're playing out, I've got like a 2 beer limit. And I remember the first time I got too drunk at one of our shows. Luckily, it didn't kick in until after we got off stage. But I had like 2 pitchers of like this really, really potent, like, basically bathtub brew they had made at the venue. Um, and I had it, while I was playing, so I was adrenalized. I didn't really notice it. It wasn't until after we got all the equipment outside, and I smoked a bowl with a guy from one of the other bands, a bowl of weed, and I ended up laying on the side of this planter box, just heaving my guts out. And I remember my bass player coming over to me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he laughed, and he said, "Hey, now I'm not the shitty drunk for once. It's your turn." And he was just laughing at me, and I wanted so badly to punch him, but I couldn't even roll over. I was just like, I was completely freaking sauced. Um, yeah, but I didn't drink that much back then, so that was a lot for me at that time. But yeah, I was always kind of disgusted by the really uh, sloppy drunks early on too. So it's like to think that I eased into it that way, so that, I didn't think I'd become like that, but
I,
eventually I did.
there was a point way like a little bit later where I like kind of would, if I would go out somewhere, I would get drunk, sort of, I guess on purpose, just sort of. I don't know. I don't know what was. I could have several theories. I mean, it was a long time ago, but like I remember I went to a show with like there's a few different times where I went. I think we saw, it was like some show. I think it was like Marilyn Manson or Disturbed or something. Somebody like I went with, and I didn't even go into the thing. I ended up like passing out on like the roof of the car. And like another time, I ended up like, I remember like vomiting in the front of it was like the civic center place, and I remember like just where people were just like streaming in and out and just sort of like just barfing going in. And I brought, like, they actually let me bring like a bag of like, they have like boxed wine. If you take it out of the box, it becomes bagged wine, so you can kind of just carry it around like on your shoulder. And I remember just like binging on it, but and just getting just like hammered and just, yeah, just, so I never like completely abstained from alcohol, but it was always just sort of like, I don't think there's a good, I have a good level of like just taking a little bit. It's either the extreme or nothing.
Yeah, if I drank early on, it'd be like that's. If I drank early on, I would do it like, generally it would just be at parties, and then I would tie a good one on, but then I would, like go home and sober up, and I wouldn't drink for, weeks afterwards. So it wasn't until probably my mid 20s I started drinking, more consistently, but I was still very moderated about it. Um, yeah, and it's been like the past 5-6 years that I started like actually daily drinking. Um, and it became a big problem for me. Was when I couldn't stop myself. So I mean, the at the beginning of this year, I had like almost 100 days, which is the longest I've had without alcohol probably since I was in high school. But it would be like a couple times a month. For a long time. It wasn't very often.
Yeah, once it gets integrated into the system, I have some friends of mine that they grew up. I mean, it's like Planet Party, and they still party, but then now when it's people don't really party much anymore, but they're still. I don't know. This is where it's uh, it's a struggle dealing with people because
Yeah.
if people drink like every because like well it's just like just drink every day and they're and because I just had this conversation with somebody with a friend of mine. It's a good thing because they're just like yeah it's and we drink every day, but it's therefore it's kind of like functional. I'm kind of like it's like yeah, but nothing ever stays the same. That's the thing. Where's it going to go from the future? So you got to try to guide where it's going to be headed. Suppose like you're never going to stay. If you're like, wait, why don't I drink like this much a day, or only take this much, you know, of
Yeah,
whatever.
because I mean, inevitably, if you do it all the time, you're going to build a tolerance. It's not going to be enough to achieve the same high. It doesn't matter what you're using, right? So
Yeah, it's like the law of physics. Something's going to happen. Something's going to give in one direction or another.
do you ever do like any of those like sober Octobers or any of those types of things?
Have,
Like
have I ever
like
done any?
monthly? Oh, you've never done it?
Nah, never really. Never messed with any of that.
Yeah, I'm like, it's my birthday month. That's when I want to get wasted. No.
So you're running a politics stream?
Well, yeah, I was just reading some news. Generally, I was just kind of keeping myself occupied there. What's your take on that? Are you for any of the major candidates? Or are you like a third party guy, or what? What's your position?
I don't know. I guess for all intents and purposes, I'm a Trump guy.
Is he your actual preference, or just the one you think that is likely to win?
Uh, if we're talking about between like Kamala Harris and yeah, then he's my
Or
preference.
any other prospective Republican candidate, I would say.
I can find. I could probably still find it. The original back when I was on a message board from an old message board that I used to go on like decades ago from when I first was online from way back in the day. And I remember I piped back in there a few years later, you know, and it was when Trump first was he had made the announcement that he's decided not to run for president. So I think it was like the 4 years prior to when he did. That's what it was like 2014 or whatever, 2012. I remember. But I remember my post was like I specifically just for some reason it struck me to make a whole post on there quoting that article and then being like my reaction to this was the same reaction that I had when I was taking my garbage out and I made eye contact with somebody whose dog was taking a crap, and we made eye contact while this event was happening, and it was for a second awkward, and for a second I had to look away, and then we kept walking, and then at the end nobody gave a shit. or something like that. I don't remember the exact wording, but and then yeah, when he first started running, um, yeah, it was absolutely like this is a joke. This is a freaking this is a a nightmarish joke. But yeah, at this point now, yeah, he's absolutely my 100% pick. All that being said, yeah, everything at this point is it's still an absolute nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. Everything that's going on right now. This is the downfall of society. It's what we're witnessing. Like everything that people have been saying for years, and people would kind of I want to like laugh it off. Downfall of society, civilization's corrupt. It is happening. This is what we're seeing. So now at this point, it's just a matter of where's the chunks of the burning the tower that's collapsing going to land near you. Like, at what direction do I want to step while the pieces are falling and crushing people? That's my take on it.
Well, I find it interesting because Americans are more likely to say things like that, and we are the youngest nation in the world, or amongst, I guess there are younger ones now, but we're one of the younger ones, right? Um, we're also like one of the most hysterical, and we point and say, look at what's going on in Germany. And most Germans are like, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Like, it's not that big of a deal. We dealt with Nazis and shit, like we're still fine. It's just Americans that get like really hysterical, like, oh God, society's crumbling, or, like, so
I think we generally have a more globalist perspective because it's like, yeah, in Germany, it's like, well, yeah, that happened, and at that point, it was very difficult for. I mean, people still had to find ways to get to like Crete, and like you still had to like the infrastructure wasn't there yet for a true global like I don't know what the right word is, hegemony.
right,
But
right.
I think that's what is going to happen. That's the logical thing that's going to happen next. And of course, as a Bible person, I think that's exactly as far as the whole like global takeover of an evil force. So yeah, that's hysterical. But of course, America is also known for its Bible Belt and all that kind of crap. Which now that suddenly I'm sucked into that is interesting. It's kind of like, okay, I'm an American. I hate the whole cowboy thing. I never did like that. I still can't stand it. Boots and the hats and the line dancing just makes me cringe.
I saw a George Carlin bit on that that I either hadn't seen or had forgotten about. This is an older one, but he made a reference to that. He was like, "What's with these guys? Walking around dressed like cowboys? Like go get some real clothes, you jackass! Like they're walking around in costume. Like, um, it's true, It's like, man, um,
That's one thing I'm glad because I think it's because my mom growing up, like the bars that she hung out because she was a single mom, so she would hang out at like, and they were all for some reason those freaking these like hillbilly bars, and we're from the East Coast where it's like there wasn't any hillbilly. I mean, we were, I mean our hillbillies had tri-corner hats, so unless like we never had like that whole that Americana thing. So it always reminded me of like the lame adults in a way. It's like the country music is like pretty much the only music I can listen to. Pretty much any music except for country music.
yeah, a lot of country music really rubs me wrong. There's certain artists I do like, like Johnny Cash and stuff. Although some would argue that's not necessarily country primarily, but um, I still consider it, country music or uh, but yeah, and I think with a lot of young people, like it's really weird. Like you'll see this mixture now. Like if you go out to bars, they'll play alternate between country and rap music, and it kind of reminds me of like one of my younger siblings who
Whoa.
thought they were very much into rap, in their like teenage years, right? And then like flipped and now is like in their early 20s and going square dancing and all this stuff
Yeah.
and it really blows my mind, you know, and there's just no consistency. Like I've been into the same music more or less since I was about 10 years old, you know, and I had a pretty open mind early on. You know, I listened to pop and I listened to hip hop. But once I got like firmly established into the rock and roll genre, like I pretty much stayed there. I still listen to a little bit of everything, but that's my main genre, you know. Um, but people are so like flip floppy nowadays.
I literally just told somebody yesterday because we were somewhere in the middle of this boat. That at some point they had to just listen to country music, and then this was some modern country song, and it was basically like I did my dancing, my wife took out my chances, and it's just like going off, and it reminded me. So the only reason there's another modern rap, I don't listen to any modern shit anymore at this point. It's from what I could tell, but I've there's an AI version where they've taken this rap song from somebody named what the hell I don't remember his name. Starts with an M. Muffy. But this song is ridiculously just bad, like just gangster rap. It's like I got arrested on Christmas. I didn't get to see my niggas. And just like, and I was like, dude, this is like, and it had the exact same cadence. And it was basically the same thing as this country song that was on. And I made this giant proclamation yesterday in the middle of this, but I was like, dude, this is rap. And I was like, dude, it's like come full circle. I was like the exact same thing. And I was telling this guy I was telling, I was like older than I was because he probably just didn't give a shit what I was saying. But I was just like, dude, like this is amazing. So what you just said totally is like completely on par. Like I totally agree that it's all come like musically and culturally. It's basically the same thing. And as far as certain aspects, anyway. I mean, like
yeah.
But at least in that particular genre, I mean, you know.
I can't remember who it is, but there's a new artist that like blew up that specifically that's all he does is like this country rap amalgamation. And like back in the day there was a dude called Uncle Kracker. I remember when he first came out. He was like, very cutting edge. You remember that guy?
No.
Oh yeah. Shit, what was that song he did? Gosh, now I feel like I need
Chuck Berry song called Maybelline, where he's like, "Sun went down, heat went down. That's when I heard the highway son." And he's like, he's doing like the rock and roll. But there's like a song if you look up called Ida Red, I think it's called, and it's basically a bunch of hillbillies sitting around singing this, and it's precisely the exact same. So even early on, and this is still, I mean, if you're aware, like Robert Johnson, right, in the early like 1930s rock and roll, like Lead Belly, all that kind of stuff, where you know the early guitar Pickens style, where that went into like the whole country thing with banjos, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh, I only listen to like 1960s Jamaican ska usually, or mento primarily. Yeah, it's like my default. So yeah, my style hasn't changed much in the past like 15, 20 years. Once in a while I'll throw in some like I've been in like an NWA kick lately. Because dude, so there's have you seen these AI rap or AI songs where so somebody took that run rap song I was just talking about and they made it into like a 1950s like black like rock and roll. It sounds freaking amazing.
No, I haven't. I've heard like they did like the classical compositions with AI, and then like I know there's like a couple of songs you're talking about like they did like the sampling, but they did it with was it like Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train, like some old metal songs, and then just rapped to those and kind of threw the chorus back in there.
No, I mean it's AI literally making up like a fake voice that just, I mean, it sounds real. You can't tell the difference. It's not, it's fake at this point. And singing the lyrics to this rap song. But they're totally doing it. And the rap song is like the most just ridiculous rap song you can imagine. But it being put to this like early 50s rock sound, which is just Yeah, there's a couple of them, where there's like a rap songs that they put to like 1960s soul Motown they're just being converted into just these two completely different versions that are it's incredible. I mean that mixed with like like Hitler and Mussolini singing like just the two of us and like AI voices and stuff.
I think I do remember that one somehow. I think maybe from one of Broja's streams or something. I feel like somebody played it on a YouTube stream. Um,
Hitler singing like freaking like Freddie Mercury songs or like rap songs. It's like
yeah,
that was my introduction to the AI genre.
Sammy sent us a link down here for a country song um, by a guy named Dax, "To Be a Man." Do you know that one?
I don't think so, especially if it's country.
I don't want to do anything that'll get me a copyright strike here. Oh, and then there's a mega remix.
The song I was talking about was that's basically rap to a country song. The way he's singing it. That when I heard the country song yesterday, I was like, dude, this is just basically the same thing as this rap song that I recently listened to this AI version of. It's called "Murder on My Mind." I got because the lyric is like, "I got murder on my mind. I got murder." Like that's the rap song, but yeah, the rock and roll version is it's incredible. I don't know how that works with AI copyrights.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it depends probably on how it's the um, like sampling, for instance. Like that's why the rappers got away with it, right? Because if you only sample a certain portion of the song, then the copyright doesn't apply or something. They got away with it somehow without even crediting the original artist in a lot of cases. So it just depends on how you repurpose the work. I'm sure it's similar with AI.
Melly. Oops. Melly's, but I started playing. Like, apparently, I don't know if he's again, I never even heard of the guy before.
Is that the burner on my mind? You said.
Yeah, I'm sure if you play the actual rap version, you probably get some kind of thing. But again, I don't know how this works with the AI.
Play a few
But
seconds
it's
of the
funny.
verses.
It's hysterical. What's funny is when I heard like Hitler rapping "Gangster Paradise," dude, I had to pull over. I was laughing so hard, with, like tears in my eyes when I like it came on. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Were you ever a Weird Al fan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he came out with, I think I was pretty young because I think it was at that point had it was it a tape? Did I actually have a tape with like a Walkman, like back in the day? Like, it was like the when the album Fat came out.
Yeah. A good old fashioned dub tape.
And the movie UHF.
Yeah, I only saw that one like a few years ago for the first time. I don't remember seeing that. Well, I think it probably came out when I was very young or even before I was born. But yeah, I don't. I saw that one like in my 30s, I think, for the first time, and I thought it was hilarious.
I saw it in the theater
Oh wow!
when I was a kid. It was one of the first movies I cracked up laughing out loud when I saw it. It was when they were walking through the cemetery during a commercial, and there's like your graveyards having a sloppy burials or whatever, and there's like arms, and they pan out, and there's like arms and legs sticking out of the ground. I just remember like cracking up as a kid. Good times. Classic.
That one came out.
Your microphone is fragile.
Old.
Your microphone's I think it's spazzing out.
Taking a crap. You go to my settings here. See, are we any better now? Sometimes if I just change the settings, it works. Other times not. Or I can do that.
That seems right.
Can you hear me now?
Right. Yeah, the buzzing went away.
Might have had too much crap open here.
Yeah, I've only played on stage a couple times. I was in I've only played on stage a couple times. I was in like a. I think your echo cancellation turned back on.
Oh. Just as Sammy said, that's better. Okay, let me see. That you were in the middle of saying you'd played on.
Yeah, like maybe like 4 or 5 times. Like actually as a band, like in a band. Actually, I mean that's not included like random like places like playing with people. Although there was more one time I did like a Simon and Garfunkel set with the guy at another friend of mine's like 30th birthday party back in the day. I think it was with Lord of the Rings.
Folk music?
Yeah, back then I was more into it. I tend to avoid more emotional music these days. Like back then I listened to a lot of like very intense music that's why I just stick with ska. It's just usually very just bouncy and happy and even though it's usually about like depressing subjects, but it's just still very upbeat.
Are you into Real Big Fish?
I wouldn't say I'm into them. Okay. Although I would like
they put out a
bunch jam to covers before. Yeah, I've definitely jammed.
We got Mikey in the back.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
All right, how you doing, Mikey?
I'm doing wonderful, Kevin. Good to see you. Hello, Kelby.
Hey, happy Sunday.
Hey, yeah, well, now it's early Monday here.
Oh, yeah. yeah, I need to get this sleep soon.
Yeah, you guys are 3 hours behind me. Damn time zones. Yeah, but I'm still awake. I like your John Delancey as Q. That's a great Q picture right there in the avatar. Like that.
Yeah, I've been using that for like, man, almost it's at this point it's been almost like 20 years. I've been using that picture for like random.
Yeah, but I mean, like some newer people may not recognize it and go, "Who the heck is that?"
Yeah, it happens all the time now. People think it's me, and I don't even bother correcting them. It's laugh. It's amusing.
Yeah, you just laugh at them and go, "Yeah, I'm Q. I'm in the continuum, and this is, and this is what I look like." Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
way older than he is now, probably. Although I looked it up, I think he was still like in his mid. I think think we're still around the same age at this point, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Let's see how old he is. I can look it up here real quick. Yeah, there he is. Let's see. He was born in 1948, March 20th. So that means he is 76 years old. He just turned 76 back in March of this year.
So that episode probably was about, let's see, that episode was probably season 4 or 5. So that would have been like 1980 or 1990, somewhere around, like probably. So if he was born in 1948, then he would have been like, I don't know, 172.
He did a movie. He did a movie in 1987 called On Fire. But I think before he assumed the Q persona. But he's been in so many other films, though, besides that one. I know he's done a lot.
Breaking Bad.
He was in Breaking Bad? I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. I never got to see Breaking Bad with Cranston and stuff. I'm kind of upset because I really wanted to check it out, but the thing was after we got rid of cable and all that stuff after our move, so yeah, kind of bummed out.
Wasn't he the air traffic controller in that one? The Pinkman's girlfriend's dad.
Yeah.
That was him, right?
Yeah.
No spoilers, tell
right.
me what happened there.
That might have been that got me into the show when back in the day when my wife was watching it, and I was like, I'm not interested in this. She's like, oh, what's this about? Oh, it's about some. She told me the plot, and I was like, yeah, like, well, I don't want to watch that. But then one day, I think it was that scene where I ended up starting over at some point.
So, let me.
Full disclosure: I binge watched the whole series while I was spun out. So, it was well into. I think the whole thing where we got to the finale of the whole thing, and we're waiting on that, but we binge watched the whole series completely spun out. So, yeah.
Okay, so so John Delancey has 4 wins and 8 nominations. He's been nominated he was nominated once for a soap opera. This was just the Soap Opera Digest Awards first, and he was nominated for Days of Our Lives in 1986. He won for Outstanding Actor twice in 1984 and 1985 for Days of Our Lives. So I do recall him because that was one of my mother's favorite soap operas back then. Also, he got he was nominated by the Viewers for Quality Television Awards as a specialty player for his Q persona. Then he was nominated for 2 awards in the Online Film and Television Association, and then he won twice from the Behind the Voice Actors Awards, which is like the People's Choice Awards. He won in 2012 for his best vocal performance in a television series and a guest role for My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and then he repeated that same My Little Pony voiceover thing, and he won another award for that in 2015. So, yeah, and and of course he's recognized as one of the greatest villains in the Star Trek franchise. So, yeah.
So I listened to a podcast called Star Trek: The Next Conversation.
Yes.
And it's really great. It's completely chaotic, and I've even wrote into it a few times. And they'll read your letters and stuff. It's pretty cool. But they'll actually they know, because one of the guys in it, was one of the hosts of the Nerdist podcast. So he's knows a bunch of he knows Will Wheaton and Jonathan Frakes, and but but I started re-listening to it once I like finished catching up. And but yeah, dude, there's like he called in to them like once, it's like recently, and I think it just dawned on me because I think they had he's done the voice of Q in the cartoon version of Star Trek that they have out now. So he's still working. I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, he's still. Let's see, what's his?
I
I
worked
want to
on the
see what
set
he's
of
doing.
Starship Farragut.
Well, remember? Do you remember the movies that had Jason Statham called Crank? Remember, he was Fish Hallman in Crank High Voltage. That was basically
Yeah.
Crank 2. Yeah. So he was the anchor man on that. I thought that was hilarious. Uh, he was in that movie with Michael Keaton called Multiplicity,
Multiplicity. Yeah.
where he played Ted. Yeah, in that. He was in Reign Over Me in 2007 as Nigel Pennington, and he was in the movie Pathology in 2008, that horror film, as Dr. Quentin Morris. Yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah, that was a good one for Delancey. Yeah, I totally agree. Um, the last thing he's done so far, he's been in 2 episodes of Masters of the Universe Revolution, which is an animated TV series. He does a voice of Branimir, and then he just finished a movie short called Identities, playing a role of Steve. Uh, and then, of course, he did Star Trek Picard for 8 episodes of that series, and he was uh, also part of the National Public Radio Mageddon podcast series. He did 9 episodes of that last year. So, yeah, yeah, he's still working. Yeah, still doing stuff.
Yes. So somebody pointed out to me because I'm a Christian, and somebody pointed out to me that one of the things they showed me, he was on a podcast like specifically. He's like a member of this like atheist society, and like one of the most recent thing that somebody showed me was him like there was this big interview with him like on this atheist thing, like I'm talking. I found it a little bit ironic.
Yeah, that's quite
Myself.
ironic, I think. Well, he's posing. Remember,
For myself and for him. I mean,
no, sure, but don't forget that the Q at one time or another did mention. I think it might have even been during the Voyager series that somebody said, "Well, I'm sure there's someone higher than you," and they said, "Yes, but we don't mention him." And I know they were talking about God, but
oh well.
but they know that there's a higher being than they are, and I thought, well, that's good. I'm glad there's something
I always
higher
figured
than
if there was like that, I figured he was mentioning future humans because I always figured that was why they feared
right.
humans, was like because in the future they were going to become like these like evolved again, and that would have to be greater than all of those species that all seemed omnipotent and like the first in the original series, like all those different like the
Yeah.
Kelvins.
Right. Well, and Suzanne just told me that John Delancey, even though he says I don't believe in God, he says I do know that God believes in me. So he's got kind of that, belief system, I guess.
One line that his character said that struck me once was it's hard working in groups when you're omnipotent.
Yes.
And it struck me as far as, and this isn't like a theological argument, I don't think, but if you think of Q being, because I think we can agree that he's not omniscient, but
No, he's not omniscient. No.
he's omnipotent. But
Yeah.
you can only be as omnipotent as anything else that's omnipotent. So as long as there are other Q in existence, and that's if we're if that's just if we're assuming that time and space are all just one timeline dimension, because I mean it seems like the Q surpass timelines and dimensions. So
If it's relative, yeah.
yeah, so if there's other Qs around, then if it ever came to pass that there was like one Q left somehow, that would be the
Sure.
only time a Q could truly become omnipotent, because then there's nothing stopping like their power. I would think,
Right.
except for their own imagination, I guess.
Yeah, but for
That's
the,
taking
like I
cues out of
said, for
truth, I think.
even right, but to even, I mean, even John Lancey playing that character, but even for him to admit that there is a, that there is God and that God is above him, believes in him, I think that says a lot about him as a character and as a person. Yeah, it's very unique. But I've always liked John Delancey. I've liked him in almost everything. No, in fact, almost everything that he's done. So it's. I think he's fine. He's fine by me. I had no qualms about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line when you say that, like, if you said something like "I don't believe in God, but you must believe in me," it seems like it relates to like how kind of the existence of God would be. It kind of it wouldn't make sense without somebody to worship or believe in him, right? This is why, like that
Sure.
old, like in the pagan lore says something, to the effect of, um, uh, I think it was Zeus who began to lose his power when people started to turn away from him or just believe in him, right?
Or just in worship the stone idols that that Zeus had, like Mount Olympus. That was the whole deal back in the day when you had the Greeks that uh, gave offerings to Zeus and Apollo and you know and those and all of those and Mercury and all of those different gods. And then of course, when they turned away from that and started to, I guess, in a way, mature more or something, then that's when they said that they truly lost their powers. So yeah, or whatever power they had over those people, over the Greeks. So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's just a whole. Like I said, it really does come down to belief. Uh, and like I said, I don't have an issue with atheists. In fact, if they ever want to ask me my own personal opinion and they're willing to listen, I'll offer it. I'll tell them how I'm a God fearing person, but I don't disdain or condemn or say bad things about other people, about atheists that have their choice and they don't believe in God. I don't have that issue with them. Uh, I don't know if that's the case with a lot of other people, but I know with me and with Suzanne, we don't have issues with them. They've got their own kind of belief system, and as I said, that's what it comes down to. Every religion, whether you're non-religious, even agnostics. Okay, I can even acknowledge agnostics. They have their own belief system. Everyone does, and I think they should be respected just for believing in something, rather than nothing at all, just to have that belief. I mean, that's really what it's about, I think.
Yeah, I really prefer the new atheist definition, which is the suspension of a belief until I find that sufficient evidence is provided. For me, I think that, um, which some people could say they call it like lack theism or a form of agnosticism, right? But I would just say
Hmm.
I can't believe in something if I haven't had an experience with it, right?
Sure. As I said, like I said, my own personal opinion. Oh, and you're welcome, and Soul. I was reading what she said. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
welcome in.
Uh, yeah. So, like I said, for my own personal opinion and for my own personal experience, I do believe that faith and belief have uh, that they do benefit each other. They cooperate with each other. Um, I do believe that, and I think that if you believe in something, and you have faith in something you believe in, that's huge. I mean, that's like a big, because you're taking a big step. And it's not really about religion; it's believing in yourself too. Don't forget that. You can always believe in God, which is a great thing to most people, not to everyone, but to most. Yeah, I like that. There's Squire of Gothas. Yeah, the pre-Q, they say. I call him Q. I don't care what people say. He is Q. That's the first Q. Okay, from the original series.
Well, what do
You
you
know,
think of
played by the
Eddie?
wonderful William Campbell. Yeah, that's the first Q.
What do you think
And
he
his
needed a
parents were
mirror?
Q.
Do you think he
Yeah.
really needed a mirror to do his? Remember he had some
No, he
machine.
didn't need a no. He didn't need a mirror. Do you remember that even though the mechanism behind that mirror was destroyed, do you still realize that he was chasing Kirk around and popping here, popping there? That's Q. That's what Q did. Is he popped in, you know, out of nowhere without being needed or anything. He just pops into a room or something like that, which he did on Voyager, he did it on, Deep Space Nine, he did it on, TNG. Well, he didn't do it on Enterprise, thank goodness. But Daniels could be considered a futuristic, maybe before the Qs evolved. Maybe that's possible. But it's just like I said, that's what he was doing even after the mechanism was destroyed. And then his parents take him away. Now, there's this really cool novel. I don't know if you might have read it, or maybe you did, Kelby, but
Nah.
it was called Trelane. And it was basically Trelane got older, and we find out that basically the Q, played by John Delancey, is his dad. Like, he is related to him. And then Trelane goes psychotic, and he tries to get revenge on his dad and on other humans and things like that.
Nice.
It is a great read. It really is. It's a great Star Trek novel. I read it. It's a great read. It really
Did
is.
you ever see the Magics of Megas 2 from the animated series?
Yes. Yes.
That's definitely Q too, right? Like with Lucian.
It's
and
supposed to
being-
be Lucian, or playing like he's the devil, which was, I
Yeah.
guess, intentional, like an evil Q. Yeah.
Oh,
It
for
could be
they were
called-
trolling. They were definitely trolling because at that time there was a big Christian like uprising against like Satanism, and I think
Yeah.
that was like the Star Trek writer, like Gene Roddenberry, trolling people because you literally had Spock drawing pentagrams on the bridge of the Enterprise and saying
Yeah.
we have to stop using anything with technology. We can use nothing but witchcraft right now in order to and the Lucian
stop
character
him.
was like, I tried
Right.
to help your race, but my own people tried to stop me from helping you human, and the own people look like Puritans and nuns and stuff.
Yeah. And they were gonna, right, they put him in the stockade, and put him in the stocks. Yeah. The Magics of Vegas too. Yeah.
But you can see how that was converted into like later, like that's like that kind of archetype went into the Q.
It basically converted to the Salem witch trials. The same thing happened to the women that they thought were witches and killed them off, and burned them to the stake and put them in stocks and everything else like that. Hunt them, yeah.
Well, think about the
It's-
plot of Star Trek V, and also the plot of the
Well-
Voyager episode where the Q was trapped in the middle of the asteroid. Like I think it's sort of a mixture of that.
So something like that, yeah. Well, now that you referred to it, yeah, Star Trek: The Final Frontier, Star Trek V. Yeah,
They
and
both
that's
go into the
not a
center of
god,
the universe.
right? Yeah,
That's like I could say both of them break canon kind of because they go into this. That's when they actually go into the center of the universe, and the magics. That's what they find is that magic land,
sure.
and then the other one is where Spock's brother takes them. Spoilers. That's Spock's brother.
Yeah, but I still think I really enjoy Star Trek V in the line where it says, "Why does God need a starship?" And it wasn't just Kirk that asked and gets zapped, but then it's Spock. He said you didn't answer his question. Why does God need a starship? And then he gets zapped, and then you've got McCoy who says, "I know that my God or a God like this would never do anything like that." And of course,
Yeah, he inflicts
you find
pain
out
for
that
his
it's
own
a
pleasure.
demon. Right? And then you find out it's a demon and not really God.
He turns to him and he's like, "Do you also doubt me?" or something like that. And he's like, "I doubt any God that inflicts pain for his own pleasure."
Pain for his own pleasure, right? Yeah, good. I'm glad you got that quote. I was trying to figure it out myself. Yeah. So absolutely, that's the whole thing about. But don't forget, Roddenberry was also, he was human. I mean, he was a womanizer. He, flaunted around. I mean, he even slept with some of his, you know, feminine cast, feminine actress, you know, people. I mean, Nichelle Nichols. Uh, he did something with, Janice Rand. The other, I guess, the other actress who played her, Christine Chappell. Of course, eventually, he dumped his one wife and ended up flirting with Majel Barrett, and then they became a couple and got married. Yeah, so I mean, Roddenberry was by no means a saint or an angel or anything.
Well, you know the
He was
Prime
just human,
Directive.
like everybody else, right? He was just like everybody else, but he had weird ways. But I have to say, he had weird ways of expressing, uh, things of the time that were going on, and we're starting. I guess most people now are starting to appreciate that he did have a form of genius about him about it, but we got to still remember he was a human being. He had frailties and faults just like we all do. So, you know, I've never put Gene Roddenberry on a pedestal. I never have, never in my life. And that there's reasons for that. But it's just, I mean, do I acknowledge that he brought us a great franchise? Yeah, he did. But when he died, for some reason, some people decided, well, let's just mess with this, and we don't need to really follow any respectful, feelings or attributes or even good writing. And you saw what happened with that. So, yeah, you know, yeah, just sad.
Well, I think he said something to the effect of like, his concept for Star Trek was just like the basis for a spacefaring human civilization, right? Where kind of like the petty
He he literally
disputes we
called it
had.
the wagon train to the stars. He called it the wagon train to the stars. I want to create that. He says I
He
want a
also
cowboy
said
western, but I want it in space.
he
That's what he
said
basically.
everybody in the future is an atheist and they're happier for it. He specifically said that at one point. Now, it doesn't mean that
Yeah, I
he's an
know he said
atheist, but
that at
maybe
one
he just
point.
means that that's just the way it is in the future. I mean, he could believe that. I'm sure he might have been some kind of existentialist, which, I mean,
Sure,
you could argue that they have some form of God. But,
I agree with that. Sure, yeah,
and if that
yeah.
changed
I
later
agree.
on.
Yeah, everybody has that. Well, I mean, he he gave a very. I do recall. I believe if I read it right, I do recall in one of his memoirs, his early memoirs, he had a thing about religion. He said it really is. It comes down to one person's choice of who to follow, and religion is just a concept of fellowship and following. And he says if people aren't really into that, uh, they shouldn't be shunned because they have their own personal reasons um, for following a god,
He didn't seem to
or
disallow it.
after the god, things like that. So yeah, maybe that's where he
When
came
I
up with that.
rewatched the original series at some point recently, probably after I became a Christian, and I saw Bread and Circuses, like that's the
Yeah.
famous episode with the Romans, and
Yes.
the very ending of that, where they're like, "Oh, it wasn't the sun god they were worshiping; it was the Son of God," and it was like,
The Son of God, yeah.
and I thought back to all the stuff in that episode where Kirk's like, "I want to hear more about this Son of God," and I was like, "Wow, that was that." Like, I was like, "Who the hell wrote that episode?" Like, Gene Roddenberry did not write that episode. And I
No,
looked
he
it
didn't
up.
write
The
that.
guy who wrote it
No,
was like,
that was DC
Catholic or
Fontana
something.
that wrote that. Yeah.
Was there? I read whoever wrote it was a Catholic. I didn't know if it was DC.
Well, I thought it
Fontana,
was DC Fontana that wrote it.
but
The
whoever.
lady, that was a good writer, and she because it was either she wrote it or it was Gene L. Kuhn that wrote it. It was one of them. I know that, but I can't remember which one.
I can't say for
Oh.
sure. I just remember looking it up, and it was like I read that they were a Catholic. So of course I'm not Catholic, so I was like, oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
but
Let's see. Yeah, let me just check the original series here, and I can look it up. Was that from season 2 or 3? I forget.
I want to say 2, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. I am checking 2 first. Brandon Circuses. Let's see.
I just remember all the bloopers from it, from when I was a kid. If he refuses to move on Q, screw them.
Yeah. 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 Yep, it was season 2. I was right. Season 2, episode 25, Bread and Circuses. The Enterprise crew investigates the disappearance of a ship's crew on a planet that is a modern version of the Roman Empire. And let's see here. Okay, yeah, I was right about one writer, Gene L. Kuhn, John Newbull. It spells it Kneubuhl, and Gene Roddenberry all wrote the episode.
Yeah, so the idea that Gene Roddenberry just like despised religion so much that he would never even let it go near Star Trek isn't really, isn't necessarily the case for that sort of thing.
And an actor, okay, are you pretty well knowledgeable about the original series, there, Kelby?
I think so.
Okay, so Ian Wolfe, who played Septimus in this episode, also appeared in another episode as a different character. What was the name of that character that he played?
Wait a minute. What episode are we talking about again?
We're talking about the actor Ian Wolfe. He played Septimus. He played the character of Septimus in Bread and Circuses. But he also was in another Star Trek original series episode as a different character. And I just was asking you, what character was that?
I don't know. I can't think of who Septimus is. Was he the old guy, or was he like the gladiator?
The old guy, yeah, Ian Wolfe. Yeah, the old guy.
I don't know this, but if I'm going to guess, I'm actually picturing him. And was he in a Starfleet uniform?
No, he wasn't.
All right, then I have no idea then.
Okay, do you remember the episode where he played Mr. Atoz? That was him. That was Ian Wolfe. If I'm right, he also played Atoz. Yeah. Yeah, he died in 1992. Right. Let's see here.
I mean, I don't know what your gauge is for being knowledgeable in it.
Yeah.
I'm probably better with Next Generation.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. Let's make sure I'm right, because I'm pretty sure, like, I'd seen him twice. And let's see. Star Trek. Okay. Wow, they really go backwards.
Totally nerded out this channel.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I just appreciate learning. I'm not that knowledgeable about all the Trek lore, but I know a little bit of. Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget that he also did, Bonanza for 4 episodes. He did Gunsmoke for 1. So he was in Westerns even before he started doing, Star Trek. Let's see here. Okay. All right.
I know the guy that plays Trelane here. I can't think of his. I don't even know his name.
Yeah. Okay. So here it is. During he was Septimus, and then he was Mr. Atoz, and he played, like I said, he played Septimus in Bread and Circuses, and then in season 3, episode 23, All Our Yesterdays, he was the librarian, Mr. Atoz. So Ian Wolfe, he played 2 roles in Star Trek. Yeah. Sorry we nerded out there, people in the chat. But I knew I'd recognize them. That's why I was like, I said, I know which other episode he did. So he was in season 2 and season 3. That's kind of cool. Yeah. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1992, but he had a long career, though. Like I said, he did a lot of Westerns and did other stuff. Yeah.
A lot of those actors in that original series were in like the first movies like ever invented.
Yeah.
Some of those older guys.
Did you see all of the there's officially if you include everybody from the original cast, there were 6 movies. But if you include even, from Generations, where you had, Scotty and Chekhov and Kirk, those 3 actors, Shatner, Doohan, and Koenig, were in the 7th one. So if you include that, that's 7 movies that uh, any or all of the original cast were able to do before they stopped, and then it was all about the next generation after that. So yeah, I mean it's very cool.
Yeah, I remember
Well,
the peak of Star Trek time where it was Next Generation was we knew it was going out, but then Deep Space Nine and Voyager was out at the same time along with the movies. So you had that was like peak Star Trek back then.
it was, and then even like I said, even up to 2005 when you had, the Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap who decides to become Jonathan Archer in like a prequel to the original series with Enterprise, and Jolene Blaylock who played T'Pol, the cool, female Vulcan. I was like, wow, okay, cool, and I was like, and I followed Enterprise, I watched it, and but I didn't much like the fact that some other guy named Russell, I think his name was Russell Wilson or something like that. He took the theme, "Faith of the Heart." That was originally written by Diane Warren, and it was actually a song sung by Rod Stewart. I watched him in concert sing it live. So I wanted Rod to come back and do it, but I guess he would have cost too much. So they had somebody else who probably sang close enough to him and and did it. So yeah.
Wow, I enjoyed Enterprise. I really did. I mean and when it first came out, I watched it, but I rewatched it like every episode, and yeah, I really did. I liked it. I never hated it. Like I didn't think a lot of the hate was warranted for it. I mean, thinking like from what I heard, UPN like wanted to have a boy band play on like an episode at least like every like season or something. Like they really wanted to they really got studioed up, or the studio really like interfered with half the stuff they were doing. Sure, I'm sure originally they wanted to just make it take place in the Starfleet before they wanted the ending of the first season to be the actual launching of the Enterprise.
Right.
But said they had to like launch it the first 15 minutes. It was still cool.
Yeah, it's still really cool.
Baseball caps, Starfleet baseball caps, and you hear Romulans speaking their native language before they know how to translate it. Yeah, but that's when Manny Koto took over the last season or last 2 seasons, and really he was an actual fan. And he was like, "Oh, this is why Klingons only had ridges, and they didn't have ridges in this point in time." And this is he basically retconned all this stuff. It was amazing. Like that entire thing was amazing. And then using the augments, using cons, he really took all the different stuff in Star Trek and just put it all together into one big. I mean, I don't know. Some might consider that irreverent, but I think it did a good job.
Did you know, Kelby? I already had you subscribed the Christian Sodium channel. Excuse my ignorance, but didn't you go by another name before this? Were you the Christian Carpenter?
No. I never had it. That's not me.
Okay, that's a different guy. Okay.
Yeah, Christian Carpenter is a different personality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see you, Kelby Quayo. Is that how it's pronounced, Quayo?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. Yeah, so you have 588 subscribers, 340 videos, and you have some really, oh my gosh, you have some really interesting, like the Bismarck and Julian the Apostate and interrogation of the crew of U-Boat 570. Oh yeah, you got some great stuff there. The one I'm probably going to watch first would be the Bismarck, the survivors. That looks like a good one.
Yeah. How many? That one actually got 10,000 views before within a week.
Yeah,
I
that's so
considered changing
cool.
my whole channel to just dedicate it to World War II crew interrogation reports. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of making another channel just of crew interrogation reports, but
yeah.
I'm not sure how. I don't really want to
So
stress myself out.
yeah,
And
so when Roddenberry passed away, he was 70 years old.
he's
Yeah,
pretty young these
yeah,
days.
very young. I thought he lived longer. Yeah. Well,
Oh
no,
no,
he did live longer. He lived longer than Walt Disney, didn't he?
I
I thought he lived longer
think it was
than
like
Walt,
Disney was
Walt
like
did.
60 something.
Yeah,
I know when I reproduced every single like space flight launch with using the game Kerbal Space Program, like I sat there and historically went through every single launch, and yeah, and I'd sit there and look up year by year what was launched in different satellites, and by after a certain point in the 2000s, every few like years they launched a different like Star Trek members. They kept doing it. So when you hear about them doing that, they
yeah,
don't actually launch them into like deep space or anything. Like I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I just like it is like a constant thing. Like I don't know if they're launching in
yeah.
order and they come back down, and I don't know if they pick them
Sure.
back up and launch them
Oh,
again, or if they just. I'm really not sure. It's very strange. I just
yeah.
remember seeing it.
Kilby, let me ask you a question. What was your personal view uh, of his son Rod when he acknowledged when he
Oh no.
watched some of those Star Trek fan film from not only James Cawley when he came out with his New Voyages, but then after that with Vic Mignogna, who did Star Trek Continues. Rod Roddenberry said, and I quote him. He said, "I believe that these would have been the best Phase Two that my father would have done if he had lived." And he thought that Star Trek Continues should be considered canon. So, what do you think of that?
I mean, compared to what we, I really don't. At this point, I haven't bothered watching any of the new stuff. At this point, that's where I'm at
Well, I
with
mean,
Star Trek.
okay. Well, I mean, I watched. Okay, here's the thing.
With fan
What-
stuff,
yeah,
I like the idea of stuff basically going to the fans, which
sure,
is not really compatible with the kind of like capitalist society that we live in. It seems so. Like
sure.
that's where it's just like the harsh, terrible reality where it's like I wish that like I actually worked on. That's what I was just saying. I worked on the set of Starship Farragut, which they're not allowed. Like they were telling me they're not allowed to make any money off of it. Um, like they're not allowed to have like any kind of merchandise. They have to like account for it. They have all these rules that they all these fan films have to do because I've seen a lot of like I actually like the one with I think Chekhov was in it and Walter Koenig and the guy from the kid from Terminator was in it and then
Yeah,
the guy playing Icheb was in it too.
yeah. Now that's an interesting position that you say there, where Roddenberry says it's not true that I don't believe in God. I believe in a kind of God. It's just not other people's God. I reject religion. I accept the notion of God. I think that pretty much sums up a lot of people's beliefs. Because I'm a Christian, and I was born into Roman Catholic, so you know, I tend to believe that's a pretty good statement right there.
That's what I think Christianity. The difference there is that the belief in the Son of God, right? You can believe in you also believe in God, but if you believe in the Son of God, like it would be like that's where the differentiation would come from in
Sure,
general.
sure, but I believe in the Son of God too. I also believe that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary. I've read the Bible, myself a few times, cover to cover, and I know that it's open to interpretation. I understand that it can also be misinterpreted, so I understand that too. I believe as not only as a Catholic but as a Christian that there is a God, and I choose my own, and Suzanne does too, my wife. We both choose to believe that God is God, and He exists, and He is there, and He had a Son who's Jesus, and he's going to come back again in his second coming. And that's our beliefs. I mean, that's, you know, you don't have to accept what we believe, but just be respectful. That's all.
Yeah, so you saw those Julian the Apostate video. I have 2 Julian the Apostate videos, and and I don't know if you've heard of that guy, Trusty Ape. He was like after Christianity took over Rome, or however you want to look at it. Rome took over Christianity.
Right, Julian.
Like Julian was like the emperor. There was like Constantine, and there was Constantine's sons, who were mostly like, I don't think they were really Christian. I think they were just kind of as like. But then
it was Constantine that instituted Christianity, right?
Yes, but
yeah. He also tortured people first converted.
He did the edict that basically did like a toleration. He didn't like institute it as like the official religion. He just kind of issued a toleration of it.
Right.
But his sons like slaughtered their own, like, you know, they all like, it was like gangster stuff, you know, like they killed their family members, like as far as like the emperor, you know, taking over other. But so Julian the Apostate, like he grew up, he was like him and like one other guy were like the only ones that survived, like their family getting slaughtered by these so-called Christians, right, who were Constantine's sons. And so when he became emperor, he became known as Julian the Apostate because he was a pagan, because he was very well educated, and he would so yeah, he wrote a lot of he had, like the writing that I have, which is called Against the Galileans. It's only like an hour and 45 minutes. That thing must have been super long, because what exists is only from snippets from, I think, Cyril speaking again, like they're quoting it. And then I also have letters that exist that I did. There's another video I have of Julian the Apostate's letters that he's writing to people, and he's writing to like pagans, like, because he's trying to like pay off priesthoods to like sort of get them back rolling, and he's like, you know, like clean up your temples, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think I've seen your video on him, so I'm gonna have to go check that out. You said you did a couple of them, huh?
Yeah, he did a couple of Julian the Apostates. In fact, it was suggested for me, you know, where it says for you, and was suggested. So,
cool.
Yeah, because the most that I love to study, well, because I think YouTube definitely knows I love to study history and historical facts and figures and all that stuff. So that's probably why they put that up there, including the Bismarck, which I'm very interested in.
Playlist called there's 2 playlists that would probably interest you. Then the one is just historical audiobooks, which the first one I did is like Plutarch talking about what the moon is. It's like actually a dialogue of a bunch of people talking about what's on the moon, and like from 100 AD. And then the U-boat playlist, which is just called like U-boat interrogation or World War II U-boat interrogation reports. Like they have all those in one or in specific playlists.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Julian the Apostate, there's the one of him writing against the Christians, where it's like a philosophical, basically a argument against them. It's called Against the Galileans. And then I have another video, which is his letters, or a bunch of letters that I have him writing to people.
Wow. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I definitely figuring that out.
Yeah. No, it definitely sounds. Yeah, it's definitely interested in it. What was I going to say?
Not like self-promote my channel or anything.
Oh, no, that's fine. But I was going to ask you, have you ever seen... We usually do that. Kevin and I usually go banter and talk about that too. Both our channels. Pretty unique. Well, that's why we endorse each other. I endorse him. He endorses me. We go back and forth. It's kind of like that, you know. So we can definitely throw you into the mix there, Kelby, and recommend your channel as well. Well, I do because I subscribe to it, so... what am I going to say? Oh, so have you seen, did you ever see the movie Das Boot, loosely based on a story of a U-boat during that time?
Oh, yeah. I can tell you.
I actually haven't. That's one movie I haven't.
The captain was Lehman Willenbrock, originally, in the real one. And I've read a lot about the U-boats at this point. I actually have one recorded that I got burned out on them because I started once I got into the American. So I was doing them chronologically, and I was releasing them like every Monday, and I would get like 1,000 views like within like a few days. On like they really caught on to the algorithm, and then at one point I released one that I followed a different format because this was the first one where the Americans took over a U-boat off the coast of North Carolina, and I put like maps, and I put it's if you look at it, it's called the Chronicle of U3. I think it's U351 versus the USS Icarus, and I put like pictures and maps, and I put like all this stuff. But it took me a while to get it out because I was just like a lot of like just putting pictures together, and then like just the algorithm just like didn't catch it. And I got like 3, and I was like, all right, and then I had another one recorded because it started because the next one I'm doing, man, they sat out in the water for like they all like died. They thought they were gonna die. Like, and I started putting like pictures because when the Americans took it over, and started like capturing you, like we have a lot more documentation. So that's where I'm like, I don't know what to include, like because this next one has like actual interrogations of like where they had secret recorders in their cells and stuff.
Right.
I think
this is interesting about the concept of where it came from. What he calls Constantinianism, but he calls it he's an originator of the religio-political ideology, which that's interesting that he was all about uniting church and state, but nowadays, including the United States, are all about separation of church and state. So that makes me wonder sometimes, just,
Yeah, which is what's really interesting about the concept of the Christian persecution, because the Christians were actually, as far as I understand, they were persecuted by the Jews. The Romans were actually about religious freedoms.
Yes.
As a pagan culture. So they invited you to worship any god you liked, right? But it was the Jews who were persecuting the Christians.
Your mic is spazzing out again.
Oh yeah, your mic is going out there again, Kevin.
But it was like from Christian to Christian standpoint, like the original, the Arian Christians, who were the ones that were teaching that Jesus was like a regular man, and that the scriptures were like allegorical. Like they were technically the first ones like that was started, like they actually were shedding blood against like other Christians as heretics. And that's the ones, if you read Julian the Apostate, he's like, yeah, these Christians are only in it for the, but beyond that, the general idea where, like the kingdom of God being the Rome, that if you read Eusebius, he loved Constantine because Constantine is the one who put a stop to the persecutions, basically. But prior to that, like people like Justin Martyr and like the earliest like apostolic writers, like those people, like the earliest people, they always believed that there was like this future, like basically the kingdom talked about, like the Book of Revelation was like talking about a future like kingdom of Israel and this sort of thing. Like, and just it was they called like the millennial kingdom, and like people like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus in his earliest church, and Eusebius admits that he doesn't agree with that anymore. That's called like what's it called? There's a guy named Nepos who wrote a book about it, but that changed because at that point, once Rome became Christian and you did marry the church and state, now all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, well I guess we are the kingdom. I guess it's happened now already, 300 years later, and this is it. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't they think that? Right. When it comes down to it, unless you like really study scripture, where it's like, but again, like just like because you're gonna have people talking about, well, it says Israel is going to be a country again, and it's like until 1948, people were like, this is like a metaphor for the church doing their stuff or coming back, and it's like, and then you see preachers that are like, well, once that happened, it's like then only the people who took it literally were validated by anything. But that's where you get into all the friggin'.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I going through history courses like I did. Constantine the Great is one of those that I looked up to. So,
his sons were really like seemed to be the because again he had his issues. I mean, he definitely had his issues, no doubt. But I think that he was more sincere as far as trying to like you imagine, like I can imagine what kind of stuff like somebody who's like a ruler, like he's like but looking at the way the Sons came up, because they seem to be more like the mafia gangsters, the way like they remind me of like Uday. And I mean, they weren't necessarily as bad as like Uday and Husa, kind of, but then again, it seemed to be like, yeah, Roman tradition to slaughter your family members.
It's kind of wrong. Yeah, definitely wrong. But yeah,
I think it was
I can't say they were.
necessary to.
I can't say they were.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, no, like people like the Sons of Constantine, where it's like, did they represent Christianity as it was represented by the church prior to it being taken over by the Roman government? And I don't think Constantine necessarily did, because he left it to the church itself, basically, except for the fact that because that's all he did was basically, it wasn't until like it was like Theodosius II where they finally started trying to stamp out paganism, like as a government rule. But again, I still have to say that, especially as a Trinitarian, that it was Constantine's sons, being the Arians, who were the first ones to really like use the state apparatus to try to like banish Trinitarian Christians, and those are the ones like Athanasius and Hilary of Poitiers and like all those who write about it. It's interesting stuff. Again, it's interesting.
It's not well known because
it's not well known. A lot of this stuff is not well known. Right. Echo.
Yeah.
Sorry. Echo.
No, sorry. This depicts him burning the books of the Arians. So it's kind of unclear who's.
I guarantee that was
hundreds
of years. Oh wait, yeah, that's that's like from the 800s.
I'm sorry.
So that's like, yeah. I don't know if he actually, because he might have. It's quite possible. But it makes sense that he did. Like, I don't know if they actually did, because again, that could be a representation. But
sorry, I had to blow my nose for a minute. I didn't want to be rude, so sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, but well, remember that the Apostle Peter was considered officially the first pope. I remember reading this book about the popes in Rome, and this was before Pope Benedict came into power for the Catholic Church, and then eventually Pope Francis. But this book came out just before they assumed their role as Pope. And back in the day, Peter, the Apostle Peter, is considered officially as the first Pope, based on, Jesus, Son of God, Jesus Christ, saying, and on this rock I'll build my church, which is, the quote from the Bible that he said to Peter. And so basically, Peter was then initiated officially as first pope. But down the line, I also found out that one of my most distant relatives, actually on my father's side, is going back to the 12th century, and that was Pope Benedict XII, and his official name was Jacques Fournier, and he's known mostly for banning and getting rid of nepotism in the church, but he was cast out from Rome, and his official papacy residence was in Avignon, France, because there was someone else named Richard I who was running Rome. So it's what they call the Great Schism, and he is a distant relative or ancestor of my family.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did a whole paper on it. I did a report, and then I had this book, and I was like, I think I still have it. I put it away somewhere, but I read the whole book from cover to cover, and I read about Benedict, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So
I can show you there's a website called 4th Century Christianity, and there's a list that has a chronological if you're a fan of Constantine, it has a chronological list of all of the edicts that he made and all of the laws that he pronounced, like specifically the law that he made about like with Jews and like working on Saturday or working on Sunday or whatever, and that sort of thing. By the way, although I was gonna say for schismatics, because if you see the last few videos I'm doing are Hippolytus, which is like the 200s, like the early 200s or like the 190s. And what's funny is these two people that he's like speaking against like hardcore is just these two people called Callistus and Zephyrinus, and they're like, if I look them up, they're considered like actual popes. And I'm like, how whoa, this dude's accusing these two popes of being like believing in like oneness heresy or something. I was just like, how is this? And then I looked at it, I was like, oh, they consider Hippolytus a schismatic, but he's still considered a saint. So this, but then the popes are considered Saint Callistus, and so I was like, this is. Well, I believe everybody as a believer is a saint, because that's where I differ from the Catholic, the Roman Catholic. I consider myself a general Catholic, not a Roman Catholic.
Well, general Roman basically.
I've read all the writings from all the Christians prior to being legalized, prior to like Constantine. Like that's all. They're all the writings that I've done, and that's where it had nothing to do with any of the stuff that. But that's where the belief that this is what we stick with, rather than that whole like the magisterium. I can't get with all that,
Yeah, I like the mystery. I do consider myself a typical Catholic as well as a Christian, and my wife is a minister. She's an actual minister of the Universal Life Church, which as soon as I mentioned it to my mother, she says, oh yes, and they embrace Catholicism and Christianity as well. And because she's a minister, she can do funerals, she can do weddings, she can do she can listen to people give a confession here or there. That's the best part. And I'm married to her. I love that. Because it's funny. My parents always thought I was going to become a priest, a Catholic priest. And I said, well, you never know, Mom. I think God has his own plans for me. Well, I ended up marrying a minister, which is, Suzanne. So ironic how that turned out.
I find that interesting that both of you guys identify as Catholic and Christian. I was watching a video I just finished by a guy yesterday who professes to be a Christian and says that Catholics cannot be Christians, that the two are in conflict. Have you heard that before?
I kind of mean that by like almost tongue in cheek, because the early church, because I'm saying the stuff that I read prior to church becoming or the church, which I believe is those who just believed in the gospel message and were born again and saved and that sort of thing. That particular thing, like everything about it, like that in the early church, when they said, like, when they were talking about it in opposition to other beliefs that weren't their beliefs, they called it the church. Anybody else, they would call themselves the Catholic, or they would call themselves rather the Catholic, which was because they were writing in Greek usually, and the word for universal, it was katholikos, and that was just like, we are the katholikos ecclesia, which was just the universal. We are the one. We're not the universal church, but the ones who believe in this universal belief, and like this true doctrine. And I think where the Roman Catholics, well, I don't want to get into the why. I mean, I could, but so I think there's a
I it's here's what I've followed throughout the course of my life. When my parents, my mother was a Protestant before she married my father. My father was Catholic. His parents were Catholic before him, and their parents before them were Catholics. But they considered it Roman Catholic. I just called it as Catholic. I was familiar with that. And that's the way I wanted to keep it in my own mind, was just to say that I was a Catholic. And I met similar people that said, "Yeah, I'm a I'm a born again Christian and all this stuff." I said, "That's great, but what were you before that?" oh, Catholic. I said, oh, well, see, I mean, I believe, my belief in that, Kevin, is that Catholics and Christians come hand in hand. They do. They basically share a lot of similar values. They share a lot of belief system, uh, and they generally get along. I don't think I've ever seen, uh, Christians and Catholics really at odds with each other. But then, of course, that's my own experience. I don't know about other people, um, much less. But the thing is, I don't mind embracing, uh, being friends with people that like. I have Jewish friends. I have, you know, people that are agnostics. I have people that are atheists. I know people that are Orthodox. Like Greek Orthodox. Um, the Hinduism. People that are from Hinduism. Uh, Judaism, of course. Some that are Buddhist. I mean, I have, and well, I used to have one or two, Mormon believers, that were friends. I don't know if they're around anymore. I think they left, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, if you can embrace uh, and be respectful, like I said, of other religions and other people's beliefs, uh, you may find that some of their beliefs aren't that dissimilar from your own belief system. It might have a few, if you want to nitpick, it might have like, one or two other concepts that go differently, or the way you worship, or the way you.
I'm sure God having a son that was crucified is a big one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We had someone who was crucified because he was God who became man. That's what they said. Jesus Christ was God who became man and was on this earth and preached, the way, truth, and the life, and so on. And I mean, and then he's the great, actually one of the most difficult points to read in the Bible is knowing when Jesus entered Jerusalem, he was embraced. I mean, they had palm fronds, they had everything that was in front of him. He's on the back of an ass or a donkey, whichever you want to call it. And he comes in and he's celebrated and revered. But then he goes into the money changers in the temple because he knows that's a holy temple. It's a temple of God, his father. He even acknowledged that and said, these people do not belong here. They do not belong in this temple. And so he goes and rampages and breaks up stalls and things like that. And then immediately it's like the whole reverence for him as being the Messiah, and all that just radically changed in almost like a 24-hour period. Just the whole thing went totally radically the other way. And then eventually he's condemned, tortured. They
told him to stop doing it though, and he says, "Well, even if I told them to stop, the very rocks themselves would cry out."
Right. Yeah.
But so a lot of people will
understand.
I don't really, because I think you would consider me a Protestant, Mikey. There, but that's where I came into Christianity. It wasn't through like any kind of. Well, I mean, it was technically through Protestantism, but I can't identify as a Protestant because to me that's like specifically like Lutherans and like Calvinists and like and it's like I do agree more with their views than a lot of the doctrines of like the Catholic, because there are very poignant differences in the doctrines, but I think coming to it in just the most basic way possible, which is what I tried to do. And then sort of building off of that, like I didn't know the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant for like the longest time, and I didn't even know what like any of the Calvinists, you know what I mean? I just tried to study scripture and like I just listened to the Bible, on like CD on my way to work, and was just like, all right, I wanted to. I knew I had friends I wanted to argue with, like in real life, like that were Christians, and I was just like, and they were kept inviting me to their thing, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna read this and tear it apart, and then I became a Christian.
Well, like I said, it's like I said, my mother came from a Protestant background family, and my father obviously from Roman Catholic. And my mother, when she married my dad, she says, I'll accept the Catholic religion. And it was like my mother has always said to me, being when she was a Protestant didn't seem that much different from Catholicism. So when she married my dad, it just seemed like a natural fit.
The core belief is the gospel message. So everything else that gets wrapped around that, which I think is cultural. Well, I mean, a lot of Catholics will say you need to become a Catholic and you need to confess to a pope, or you need to confess to a priest. You need to take the sacraments. You need to do all this or you can't go to heaven. Catholics do teach that. Some of them. I know there's some that don't.
Some are radical.
That's where I think the core value of Jesus rose from the dead, and we believe there's life after death, and that sort of base. That's the basis. So if somebody can be saved, so I don't think just because somebody's a Catholic they can't be saved or they're not saved. But again, how well they are able to preach that message, which I think is the number one goal that anybody should have as a Christian, is to preach that message out and get it out and get people saved. So the lesser you do that, if you're like, well, you can keep being a Muslim and go to heaven with me, that's not, I think, the expedient.
Well, I guess in some ways I am always learning. I may seem like I'm naive because like I tell my wife, I believe that everyone can be saved to some extent. I believe in that. I don't believe that anybody could really be condemned to hell unless it's warranted, and I don't see that. I do see that there's going to be many, many people saved. Can I say all of them? Well, if you think I'm naive, and if I do say all of them can be saved, and think of me as naive and sort of, maybe not as well learned or as intelligent, but I do have that core belief in me that all people are worth saving. There's just,
I think Jesus died for everybody.
You just have to leave it in God's hands. That's what, that's the best advice that my, Suzanne gave me was leave it in God's hands. And when she said that my parents, like you said, are very, well, I mean, both my parents are very, they're very fervent Eucharistic ministers, and they work, they work with another. Can't remember what was the name of the group they work with now, but it's part of the church. But they, but as ministers, when they heard my wife say that, they were stunned. Like they never really heard anybody say that before about leaving in God's hands. But that's what they've been preaching themselves as ministers for ever since they became ministers in the first place. So I leave it in that perspective.
Usually the view is like transactional.
Yeah.
Where it's like people are passing back and forth. Like I'm doing something for God. God does something for me. Rather than I think that what the work that was done with Jesus dying, where it says the Lamb of God takes away the sins of the world. So I think that God does forgive. I think you can look into anybody's face and tell them that God forgives them. I think God forgives that because he's never surprised anyone. So I think that's the case. And then it's a matter of just sort of accepting that forgive. I think that's as opposed to I think what the way the Catholic doctrine goes generally, not that that's your doctrine, but as far as I understand it is you still got to go into the church, do the sacrament, and then you have to keep accepting this sort of sacrifice over and over again, as opposed to it being like it's a one-time deal and now we are, we accept to me that's like a fundamental. But then again, I think the way people receive that message and how they respond to it, because again, I couldn't picture I don't have if I had the ability to go to have that sort of thing, I don't know, I think there are different different needs for different people.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, it sounds like we could have a whole in-depth conversation about this, but I do need to wrap up. I want to be mindful of time. It's about my bedtime, but I appreciate.
I can see.
Coming in. Do you guys have anything to shill for your channel before we go? Anything coming up?
Kelvy, I defer to you. Go first and tell us about your channel.
Thanks. I've been doing a Saturday morning Apocrypha series, where I'm just sort of recording. I'm just basically filming recording myself, making my recordings of some apocrypha writings. Like I've never read them before, so I've skinned them. I've read some of them, but I don't remember any of them. So I'm just reading them again, and then I'm still working my way through Hippolytus. So I think hopefully next week I'll have out his work on it's called Christ on Antichrist. So it's a writing from the year like 200, where he's interpreting the book of Revelation about what he believes that the Antichrist is going to look like during the end of the world. So and during the Roman Empire, and it's interesting because he recognizes that they're in the Roman Empire. So he's like, yeah, we're this is like this beast is us, the Roman Empire. Even though he's just us, but it's cool.
Yeah, that's very fascinating, and I aim to start watching some of your material over the next few months, and because it is all fascinating, everything that's there, and everybody that's here, please don't forget to hit the subscribe, hit the like button tonight if you did really enjoy our conversation between the three of us gentlemen here. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Make sure you emphasize all notifications. So when one of our live streams or webcams comes up, make sure you hit the notify on button. Where it says notify me, just click on the notify on button, and that way you'll know when it's coming up and can attend. And as for myself, like I said, my name's Mikey. I come from the Mikey Suits 4 channel, which I share with my beautiful wife, Suzanne. We talk about a lot of pop culture, sci-fi, dramatic movies, pretty much any genre we can discuss about films and TV and so forth. We are still going to do a Deadpool and Wolverine review on August 15th. That's on a Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 o'clock Central, which I believe is 8 o'clock Mountain Time, and 7 o'clock on the Pacific Coast, where our wonderful Captain Chaos, a.k.a. Kevin, is. Let's see. Also, and then September 2nd, we're going to be starting a brand new webcam. I call it the weekly webcam series. And what that will consist of is Monday through Thursdays, there will be a webcam about 4 different series. And then on Fridays, we're going to be doing a live stream starting on September 6th, where we'll have a panel and we'll talk about movies that we enjoyed. The first part we're doing right now is Star Trek films. And we're just going to be starting on Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. That's already planned for that Friday. That'll be at 10 o'clock or sometime after my friend Gorilla's Random Thoughts does his Walt stream. We do that every Friday night. And then after that way I don't run into his stream and he doesn't overlap on mine. Common courtesy. And then then October, there'll be 2 events. We'll have a October Canadian Thanksgiving stream. I believe that's going to run on October 14th. Plus, we'll do a stream on October 30th, which is actually going to embrace the Addams Family and the Munsters. We're going to actually cover those 2 series and go through their movies as well. And then in November, I think it's on November 28th is when the American Thanksgiving runs. And that will be the next stream. Then Christmas, which is probably Christmas Eve, we'll do an earlier stream. I believe it'll start about 8 o'clock in the evening Eastern time. It'll just run a couple hours, but we'll talk about our Christmas wishes for the new year and everything. Then we'll do New Year's Eve, and I'll have a special panel put together of my friends that are in each of the different time zones, and we'll have them bring in the new year from each of their different zones. So yeah, that's a lot. That's all the stuff that's coming up on the Mikey Suits 4 channel. And one last thing, real quick, is that we do have 187 subscribers right now. If we can get 13 more subscribers, we will have a special stream, with panel and everything to celebrate our 200 subscribers. So yeah, please, if you get a chance, subscribe all 3 of our channels here. So we can gather up more subscribers and have more celebrations about our family, because that's what we consider our channel. They are a family, not just a community. And yeah, I mean, we all have great channels here. So yeah, please help us out.
Absolutely agreed. All right. Well, as I always say at the end of these streams, everybody out there, just be kind and stay trusty and be true to yourselves. And we will see you all next time. Go subscribe. Got links down there in the chat, and I will also at your guys' channel in the video description once we get out of here. So thank you very much, Mikey and Kelby, and everybody inside chat tonight. We had Ann Ensol, remember Sammy Jankis, Halcyonic Kaiju, William Freeman, Geo Sam, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, Viking Silver Wolf. Who else was in here? Cryptomaria, Brojo, Gen X the BS. Thank you, everybody. All right, and we'll see you next time. I'll probably be back tomorrow night at some point. So, all right, have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.